this whole situation's under control.
Getting scared.
This isn't a comedy, it's a horror film.
Has never been this much fun.
You should have seen the look on your face.
Scream 4, rated R.
Y'all need to stop sleeping on Scream 4. When it dropped in April 2011, Scream 4 did no damage. It received mixed towards positive reviews and did little at the box office. As of now, it stands as the lowest grossing entry in the franchise. I enjoyed Scream 4 upon release because you know what? I'm not a fucking pleb. Scream 4 has as much to say about the then current state of horror films as the original entry did, with some surprisingly prescient observations about the direction social media was headed, along with some solid direction from horror maestro Wes Craven. You get not just a solid horror film, but a damn fine final film from one of the genre's masters. Hello, I'm Joe, and I'm about to put you on game. Before we talk about Scream 4, we need to talk about Scream in totality. Fun fact, Scream was the very first horror film I ever saw and is a large reason why I love the genre so much. I saw the movie when I was 5 because my grandpa gave no damns when it came to horror films. His general philosophy was, if you're old enough to walk, you're old enough to see someone get disemboweled. If you want to know more about my first experience watching Scream, go subscribe to the Project Wonder Substack. Matter of fact, hit the subscribe button while you're here. I said do it, nigga. Anyway, the first Scream didn't just introduce me to horror, but reinvigorated the genre as a whole. When Scream came out in 1996, mainstream horror was in the doldrums. Freddy, Jason, Michael Myers had all been beaten into the ground due to endless sequels of inconsistent quality. Every now and again you get a heater like Candyman or Jacob's Ladder, but a lot of it was just schlocky nonsense that didn't connect to larger audiences overall. I mean, one of the bigger successes at the time, Species, wasn't even that good. It just made a lot of money because nothing gets asses in the seats like supermodel titties. I'm not even saying I'm above it. I'm just saying that was the case. This totally changed with Scream though. While it got off to a slow start at the box office, through word of mouth, the movie slowly but surely became a runaway box office success. There really hadn't been a horror movie quite like Scream. It was a slasher through and through, but it had a surprisingly sharp wit and style to spare. Scream didn't just launch a franchise, it set off a whole wave of teen-centric horror films. I'm talking I Know What You Did Last Summer, Urban Legend, The Faculty, hell, even Halloween got in the action with Halloween H2O. The success of Scream meant that Scream 2 was immediately fast-tracked for release in 1997. When Scream 2 came out, some theaters were still playing the original Scream, which, I can't think of any instance of that happening. When Scream 2 released, audiences were happy to find that it managed one of the rarest feats of a slasher sequel. It was actually pretty good. So much so that some folks argue that Scream 2 is better than Scream. I don't happen to be one of them. I like them both equally the same, but Scream's always going to have a soft spot in my heart. In Scream 2, the metatextual lens expanded to include the Stab series, the fictional in-universe movies based upon the events of the first film. The movie also finds more tropes to make fun of, with the focus this time being on horror sequels, because, obviously. Scream 2 was critically well received and only made $500,000 less than the first movie, a genuinely impressive hold. Again, Scream and Scream 2 are an anomaly, both in horror and just franchise filmmaking in general. While Scream and Scream 2 came out back to back, there was a 2.5-year delay between Scream 2 and 3, and in that time, a lot managed to change. Writer Kevin Williamson's profile had only grown after the back-to-back successes. Given that he was busy with his directorial debut teaching Mason Tingle, as well as getting his show Dawson's Creek off the ground, he didn't have time to write Scream 3. Yes, y'all, the guy who wrote Scream also brought this into the world. We salute you, Kevin Williamson. The shift in writers brought in Aaron Kruger, who, is fine. On top of bringing a new voice into the mix, the franchise also had to contend with a changing social climate. The Columbine shootings occurred in 1999, and much like today, instead of looking into better mental health treatment, addressing the impact of bullying, limiting access to guns, they instead wanted to blame violent video games and movies as the scapegoat for this senseless tragedy. Executives at Miramax were skittish and wanted the movie to focus more on the comedic, satirical elements of the franchise, at one point having to be talked off the ledge by Wes Craven when they requested that all the depth and violence happen off-screen, which That would have been a very interesting Scream movie. Scream 3 was released in February 2000 and is widely regarded as the weakest in the series. The movie made money, but it sent the franchise off with more of a shrug than a bang. In recent years, it has gained some critical reprisal due to the way it tackles the issue of women being abused and mistreated in Hollywood, which is especially ironic considering who produced the movie. The franchise went quiet for a decade, and at that point, much had changed within the genre. By the early 2000s, the teen slasher wave had eventually died down and instead expanded into 3 primary categories. You had your torture porn like Saw, Hostel, the collector movies for the gore hounds. You had countless PG-13 J-horror remakes like Dark Water, One Missed Call, and The Ring for those who wanted something creepy but not too grimy. And with the release of movies like Cloverfield, Paranormal Activity, and .Rec, you saw the rise of found footage movies, which allowed studios to pump out cheap thrills regularly. Slashers had once more gone out of fashion. The few being made were like My Bloody Valentine 3D, Friday the 13th, and Rob Zombie's Halloween duology. And it's in this landscape that Scream 4 released in 2011. So now that you have some context, let me tell you why this movie bangs. Scream 4 is good for many of the same reasons that Scream 5 is good. So much had changed in the genre in the decade between releases, so the movie had so much more to talk about, new targets to hit. As someone who both missed solid R-rated horror movies and had a deep love for both Scream and the works of Wes Craven, I was all here for Scream 4 in 2011. I was a little worried because Craven's previous movie, My Soul to Take, just was not it. That said, when I saw the movie in a packed midnight crowd, those worries quickly dissipated. Scream 4 opens with a hell of a gag. You have the standard Scream opening featuring Sinead Grimes and Lucy Hale, who were the it girls at the time. They get the phone call, Ghostface does his thing, and BAM! The movie reveals that you are watching the intro to Stab 5. We then cut to Anna Paquin and Kristen Bell watching Scream 5, and Anna Paquin has some serious critiques of modern horror films, to the point where I was like, damn bitch, you okay? She keeps going on and on about how predictable horror movies have become when Kristen Bell turns around and just yanks her in the gut. Cut to the title card for Stab 6. We then cut to Britt Robertson and Amy Teagarden, who were watching Stab 6, to which Britt Robertson's like, so are all the Stab movies just movies and other movies? And it's from there, Scream 4 wraps you in its warm, self-referential embrace and never lets go. Obviously, they get the phone call, Ghostface has his thing, they get gotted, and it's revealed that now we are watching Scream 4. Scream 4 is explicitly about reboots and remakes, but it also touches upon something that didn't exist during the first 3 films: social media and the everlasting pursuit of clout. I feel like the killer's motive works so much better under current social climate than the one of 2011. Some of the things the movie touches on, live streaming in particular, were far more niche in 2011 than they are now. When Scream 4 released, Let's Plays were just starting to take off, and YouTube was still the place you went to watch stupid cat videos, sketch comedy, and music videos. Outside of folks like Derek Comedy, Smosh, Philip DeFranco, virality was something that was more accidental than intentionally pursued. Scream 4 was surprisingly ahead of the time about the effects of virality and the lengths some folks will go to pursue it. One of the main characters, Robbie, is seen as a bit of a weirdo because he's constantly live streaming. When Gale asks him questions about it, he explains what he's doing and says that don't worry, in the future everyone's going to be doing it. And it's really weird to watch a movie like this, like, call it shot, and actually land it years later being like, oh yeah, nigga wasn't lying. Hell, the line, I don't need friends, I need fans, hits so much harder in 2023 than it did back in the day. Despite being written and directed by 2 men far older than the demographic they're aiming for, the movie avoids feeling like 2 angry old men mad at a changing world. Instead, it makes interesting observations, some astute predictions, and some surprisingly on-point critiques about the modern era. If it seems like I'm more interested in the film's commentary under an increasingly interconnected world than its skewering of remakes, well, that's because the movie itself gives off that vibe. While it does have a lot of fun driving home how many horror remakes made up the 2000s, the remake skewering seems more like a plot device as opposed to a thematic through line. There is a fun bit towards the end where one of the characters is playing Ghostface Deadly trivia game and just starts listing every single remake of the 2000s, and it really hits you just like, wow, they really did make a lot of these. So yeah, while Scream 4 has a lot on its mind, it wouldn't matter much if it wasn't an entertaining movie. And viewer, I'm here to tell you that while Scream 4 might not be the scariest movie of the bunch, it's certainly having a great time. Of the countless requels that made up the 2010s, Scream 4 far and away stands above as like one of the most effective and one of the most fun. The old cast slips back into their roles effortlessly. Neve Campbell is always great as Sidney Prescott, and Courteney Cox seems to be having the most fun as Gale in this movie than in any other one of the franchise, including the newest ones. Also, gotta shout out David Arquette, who's just still lovable as Dewey. The new generation are no slouches either. Emma Roberts' role as Jill Roberts is a fine addition to her Scream Queen legacy. Hayden Panettiere goes so hard as Kirby they had to bring her back for Scream 6, and Eric Knudsen and Rory Culkin do a solid job as Robbie and Charlie respectively. They essentially split the Randy role as the movie's resident movie geeks. This is a cast that's fully game, and you have the master himself, Wes Craven, going up for his final at-bat. At the time, we didn't know this was going to be his final film. If Scream 4 had proven successful, Scream 5 and 6 were going to be direct sequels to this one that he was attached to direct. As far as final films go, Scream 4 is up there, man. The energy of the first 3 films is firmly there, and Wes Craven shows that even in his 70s, the man could direct the hell out of a set piece. If you dug Scream 2022, you are probably going to dig Scream 4. Sure, this one doesn't have Jenna Ortega, but it's fun in a very similar way. Scream 5 worked because so much time had passed between Scream 4 and 5 that the horror genre had time to evolve into its more elevated era. Beyond Scream 2, which said everything that needed to be said about horror sequels, the Scream sequels really work when enough time has passed both within the genre and culturally that it has new ideas to play with and new tropes to poke fun at. Scream 4, like Scream 5, shows that the franchise will always have some juice in it if it's given enough time to rest. Horror will never go out of style, and the things we fear will always evolve with how our world changes. Personally, I'd love to live in a world where every 10 years we get a new Scream movie to hold court on the state of the genre. But, considering studio execs don't know how to make a movie without a brand or a number at the end of it, we're getting Scream 7. Which, I want to be hopeful for. The announced director, Christopher Landon, has made some solid horror flicks and Freaky and the Happy Death Day movies, but I just feel like the franchise is running the danger of becoming the very thing it set out to lampoon. But enough about the state of movies. If you're looking for a funny, violent, exciting good time, give Scream 4 a watch.